Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope all of you are doing well. I do apologize the way I have my camera angled at. It's pretty much a hassle to get my phone out of this case I got, this brand new case. So I decided, you know what, I'll just use the little like kickstand on the back and just lean it against something. That way I can still make a video where the angle is not too bad, rather than trying to fight the phone and get it out of the case. At least for the time being. Um, Excuse me, I just got done eating breakfast and I wanted to make a video, so I'm still in my pajamas. Like, I got up, well, I wouldn't say I got up late, but I got up at a pretty decent time, but also a little late. And I haven't really done much other than, like, clean up a little bit and get, stuff ready to take pictures of so I can list it on eBay. So, if I look like I'm tired and look like crap, it's probably because I am tired. And no, I don't feel like crap. That's always a plus. I wanted to do this video because I kind of was inspired recently after just kind of watching random stuff from the 90s. And this is kind of a challenge for you guys. You guys can do, you can comment down on the video, you can make a video response, it doesn't matter. Would love to hear your guys' response in a video response. I think you can say more when it comes to that. But basically, what decade is better? The 90s or the 2000s? And I mean from 2000 to 2010. To me, it's got to be the 90s for numerous reasons. Number one, and this is for film and television, the variety of movies that we got in the 90s really gave everybody something. Whether it was action, horror, comedy, sci fi, it did not matter. We constantly got something for somebody. Another reason, CGI wasn't as big as it was, or not wouldn't say as big, but it wasn't heavily relied on as it was or as it is today. Back then, yeah, you had films that used CGI, films like Terminator 2, Judgment Day, The Matrix, which really broke the ground for that. Same with Terminator 2. So, yes, we did have CGI throughout the 80s and stuff, but as if you look more till to now, and maybe the mid 2000s, it really starts to get heavily relied on. The 90s gave us a little bit both, a little bit of CGI, a little bit of practical effects. Some films just used practical effects. And you also had great films for the kids. Especially me growing up, I could not tell you how many movies came out that were kid friendly, that, a lot of us, now that we look back at it, we can relate to. We had films like Little Giants, Page Master, Troll in Central Park. I mean, the list goes on and on. Not only that, but television was big. I mean, big. Disney. Disney was probably at its prime in the 90s, to an extent. Disney had whatever movies. No, Disney had their Disney Channel, and whatever they were airing during that time in the 90s, television wise, was fantastic. It gave us Lizzie McGuire. Um, and it gave us a few other stuff I can't think of right off the bat. Then you had the Disney Channel original movies coming out. You had a lot of the old Disney classics getting re-released on VHS. Films like Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Pete's Dragon, Snow White, Pinocchio, all those older classics. Then you were getting, The Lion King. We were getting Aladdin, Hercules, Pocahontas. We were getting oh, there's a movie, I just had it and it just like kind of, when you think of something and then all of a sudden you go blank. Uh there was a Disney movie. Toy Story. Pixar's very first movie, Toy Story, which came out in 95, and now look what happened, you know? Um just there's so many films out there, and whether that's mainstream films or films that kind of came out and nobody really knew about. Full Moon was heavy in the 90s. I think they actually made their, well, no, I think there were some films that came out in the 80s, but the 90s gave us The Puppet Master, The Demonic Toys, Trancers. I mean, there's so many movies out there, whether they were sequels or, they were just coming out. Subspecies. So, we had that, and there was just so many. But then there was movies that came out that kind of fell under the radar. Became cult classics. Films like Hackers. A great example I'm going to use, if I can find my DVDs. Here we go. Films like this. Rover Dangerfield, which is a film that I don't think everyone has seen or heard of. It's a early 90s Rodney Dangerfield movie. And I think his only animated film. Love this movie, came out in 91 from what it looks like. So yeah, and this is getting a Blu-ray released come January 30th, which I'm excited about. Another DVD I can show you guys that's a prime example of the 90s is Joe's Apartment, which is actually MTV's first movie. And this came out in 1996. So this came out in the mid 90s. Early, late 90s. Excuse me. So those films alone, were kind of films that, Joe's Apartment came out, but the more I look back at it, it's a film that I don't hear people talk about. It's kind of one of those movies that wasn't as popular and kind of fell under the radar. Another one I'm going to use is Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde. A film that came out and fell under the radar, not everyone talks about, and I'm sure there is a cult following for it, like a lot of movies out there have. And then, of course, as I stated, Disney gave us such an amazing variety of movies. I'm going to use these two bootlegs that I got probably a few years ago. Brink, Disney Channel original movie. Had a great cast. Very enjoyable film. Love this movie. Definitely one of my favorites. Another 90s film we got is Suzy Q. Now, this wasn't a Disney Channel original movie. I think one of the production companies that Disney owned, I think, did this movie. Or they bought the rights to the film. I'm not 100% sure. But, again, it's now Disney property. And another Disney property is Luck of the Irish. So, the 90s, gave us so many great variety of films, whether you were an adult or a kid. There was so much. Nickelodeon was really on their A game. Are You Afraid of the Dark? And all the animated shows they had. The movies, Good Burger. The Rugrat films that were coming out. And then if you look at television for adults, The X-Files being really big. Farscape came in. During, I think the late 90s. There's just so many shows, that gave everybody a wide range of genres. Look at the stars that were big at the time. I think, Julia Roberts, big in the 90s. You don't really see much of her now, but 90s, her name was everywhere. Richard Gere, his name was everywhere. Harrison Ford, Bob Hoskins, the late great Bob Hoskins. There's so many actors. Look at the big action stars of the 90s. Guys like, Chuck Norris was kind of, in and out here and there, but he was a well-known name. Now I think he's retired and enjoying life. I think he does a few things here and there, but like Van Damme, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, they were all the big Van Damme, all these big stars that, were doing stuff at the time. I think I've said Van Damme already twice. I think I said it twice. But again, big stars. Every time you turned around, a new movie was coming out. One thing I love about, the 90s, as I was stating with the TV shows, Saved by the Bell, Boy Meets World, these shows, they were cheesy, but they were enjoyable. And what I liked about them was the fact that they did talk about certain subject matters, like drinking and driving and drugs and smoking and things like that. We don't get that today. And I feel like we need to. A lot of the shows in the 90s, if you look back at a lot of these old classic shows, even stuff from the 80s and 70s were doing it too. They were really touching on subjects that are sensitive, but they had a message behind them, and I always enjoyed that. But we don't get that today. Power Rangers came in the 90s and opened up a huge door. It became one of the biggest pop culture phenomenons I can think in a very long time. And to this day, it's still continuing. Whether that's movies or television, you know. And at that time, due to the popularity of it, it opened up the doors for VR Troopers, Mask Rider, and Mystic Knights of Tyrannog, and Big Bad Beetleborgs. Now, mind you, yes, these were all trying to ride off the success of Power Rangers, but over the years, they have grown a cult following. So, you know, they still have that popularity. But if it wasn't for Power Rangers, those wouldn't they wouldn't exist today. And a lot of those are, you can watch the original Japan, shows that, they basically had to use footage from. And there's a lot of difference on those compared to the American version. But if it wasn't for the Power Rangers, we wouldn't have those. Um, so yeah, I just feel like the 90s was, when it came to film and television, was really, really at its prime. I'm not, disrespecting the 80s at all. That would be a different subject. But when I think about the 90s and I think about the 2000s, because that's the time, I was a little kid, becoming a teenager and a young adult. Um, you look back, and if you look at today, we don't get TV shows that had subject matter because everybody's so sensitive now. We don't have things pushed down our throat like, a lot of people tend to say that a lot of these shows and movies are just throwing stuff at us. Um, Toy lines. I could not remember how many movies came out in the 90s and had a toy line. That's kind of limited to now, and I feel like they should still do that to an extent. It should be more on the collector's side. So like if a new film came out where you could make a collector's edition figure, that would make more sense. But you don't get that anymore. um, you know Today we're heavily, we're heavily into like reboots, remakes, sequels. Some films, I don't mind a sequel, like Bill and Ted's Face the Music. I think that was something we all wanted. Did it do well? Yes, I think that there was a lot of mixed feelings, but to me personally, I couldn't think of anything different. They really did it right. Excuse me. And it was enjoyable. I think that was the best way to end the Bill and Ted. But if you look at Dumb and Dumber 2, that's an awful sequel. The more I kept watching that sequel, the more I realized I did not like this movie. It was straight up awful. So we're heavily um, high on having sequels after so many decades. We have spin-offs, um, which is okay to have to an extent. I feel like certain shows should have spin-offs to kind of give us updates on our favorite characters. Saved by the Bell is one example. Boy Meets World is one example. Having a spin-off is completely fine in those universes because you can really relate to some of the characters, and it's nice to see what these characters are doing after the college years and stuff like that. I do feel like Saved by the Bell, the newer spin-off could have lasted longer if we incorporated the new class when that came. um, so I felt like to an extent certain things could have worked well. Girl Meets World I thought was perfect. It gave us an idea of what a lot of these characters are up to and what happened to some of the characters in the original series. So I really enjoyed that. iCarly is another one. So when it comes to specific shows, I feel like the source material works because you can expand on that universe. But other shows, not so much. Then we have movies that are getting turned into shows. like Scream. Scream did not need a TV series. If you were going to do a TV series, it should have been tied into the movies. It should have been its own spin-off and could have had the characters from the show follow into the later sequels. That's how I would have done it. I feel like if you're going to do a TV series based off a movie, it has to be a continuation. It cannot be its own thing because I feel like it's not going to work that well. And I feel like you can expand on the universe of the film through the TV series. Prime example of this will be Welcome to Derry, the It series that we're going to be getting next year on HBO Max. This is going to it's actually a prequel, but what the great thing about this is that it's going to expand the It universe, and as many have said, the source material works better as a TV series compared to a movie because you can put so much into it, but now we're finally getting that, and I couldn't be any happier with that. So, Harry Potter, another one that they're going to be doing, they're turning the book into a series, and it's going to rely heavily on the books, rather than kind of being its own thing with the movies. They're going to use a lot of the source material of the books, so in a way it's going to be a different change. Do I consider a remake? No. Same with It. The two It movies that we got in 2017 and 2019 are not. They are not remakes because the original source material is a book. It's a different adaptation. Same with Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson is getting a TV series. It's a different adaptation to the book. Now, if a movie gets a remake or something that's based off the movie, then yeah, that is completely a remake or whatever. But these are not a remake. They are different adaptations because they are heavily based off of a book. So, it's things, certain things work in today's standard, but not so much. Again, we're high on remakes, reboots, gender swaps. I don't mind the gender swaps. Like me, I love the 2016 Ghostbusters film. That movie is so ridiculous. It's entertaining. And I kind of pass everything that goes on, and people take things, oh well, they make look Chris Hemsworth look dumb and everything in that movie. I think Chris Hemsworth was having a good time. And I don't, to be honest with you, I don't see that. I just, I'm not going to sit here and pickpocket and point every bad thing out about a movie. I want to be entertained. If that was the case, I wouldn't be collecting movies. So I want to be entertained in some way, and I want to have some enjoyment. And so I look at some of the films that get really big and bad negative responses and reviews, and I look on the bright side of them. Excuse me. Yes, do they have their flaws? Absolutely. To me, like I said, I really enjoyed the 2016 Ghostbusters film. I am a fan of Melissa McCarthy. I am a fan of Kate McKinnon. Uh, is it McKinnon, I believe? Leslie Jones, they're all fantastic. I've watched them on Saturday Night Live. Melissa McCarthy, I've been a fan of. So this movie was Kristen Wiig. They're all entertaining. So incorporating them into a Ghostbuster film was very entertaining. Yes, I do take the story as a alternate universe, like a multiverse, like we see in like The Flash and Arrow and things like that. So in a way, I do feel like it's set in some different type of universe. But I did enjoy that movie, and it's one I would rewatch and have in my collection. So, to an extent, we have some decent stuff, and to an extent, we don't. And we rely heavily on like CGI and things like that. And here's an example. I'm going to use an example. This is something I would like to see. So, for those who are a Star Trek The Next Generation fan like myself, as you guys know, when the Blu rays were coming out, when they were first coming out, the company went back, which is Paramount Pictures, I believe. Was it Paramount? I know they released a lot of the a lot of the movies on 4K and Blu-ray. So yeah, I would say it's Paramount who released the seasons. They went back and redid all the CGI. So if you watch the original broadcasts on like the VHS set that they came out, which was like the entire series they released on VHS. Look at the CGI on that, and then look at the CGI on the Blu-ray. It's going to be a completely night and day. They did this for a reason. They went back and updated everything. And it started to make me think, if they can go back and make the CGI look a lot better. Now, mind you, it's not going to be perfect. Like I'm going to sneeze. It's not going to be perfect. By all means, it is not going to be perfect. But if they can go back and redo it to make it look way better than it originally looked during its original broadcast, why can't they do that for some of their movies? A great example that I feel like they could use is The Scorpion King and The Mummy. Go back, redo the CGI. I think you can make those movies better. And here's what I would do personally. Look at movies that had CGI where it was just not great. Go back, redo that CGI, and then release the film on like maybe a special edition Blu-ray or 4K of some sort. You are going to get your money's worth. I can guarantee you that. But drop a trailer. Show the comparison of the original scene and then the new scene where you've updated everything. Yes, it's a lot of work. So I'm not saying you have to do every film, but do films that may have a bit popularity. Ghostbusters is a great example. Ghostbusters 2. Redo the CGI. I guarantee you those movies will look absolutely amazing. Because I've noticed some transfers don't always look that great. What's another example? As I said, the Scorpion King in The Mummy 2. The Mummy, you could redo the CGI on. I mean, there's just a select few of movies where I feel like you can go back to the negatives and you can redo the CGI, release a limited edition release of the film, and not only are you going to make back what you lost in that movie, but it's going to allow you to keep doing it with other films because the demands will be there. I feel like that truly, so many movies have lost money due to just the films either being just absolutely garbage or the CGI was awful. Go back and redo the CGI. Release the original cuts of films that the directors had intended. I know that's a big thing that's been going on. Oh, the Zack Snyder cut, the the first Suicide Squad, the David Ayer, what's his name? I have the film. I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. I'm trying to see what his name is. It is, who's the director on this? David Ayer. You know, he has a different cut of this movie, as he has stated. Kevin Smith has stated that there is a really different version, Schumacher cut of Batman Forever. Release those. You won't know how fans are going to react until you release it. I think the Crow City of Angels had a different cut of the film. You know, I don't quote me on that, but I think there was stuff that was either it was the original script or there was stuff that was filmed and just never got the light of day of a release. Release these director's cuts, extended cuts. Release them because, in my personal opinion, you're not going to know how fans are going to react until you release it. Okay? All the films you have released where you've lost money because it was a box office flop, especially those that have the CGI, go back and redo the CGI. All the films where you cut scenes out so the pacing and some of the scenes don't make sense, add those scenes back in, re-release it. The companies that do that, and here's how you get the market of people's reaction. Drop the scenes on YouTube. Get the reaction from the fans. If you see that there is a higher demand and a higher like than a dislike, then guess what? Then you know to put it out and people are going to buy it. And it would be great for like us movie collectors to have different versions of film. Like, great example of this. Me, I still need to pick up more of the DC live action films to complete that series of films. I do want to pick up the Joss Whedon Justice League. Is it a great film? No. I do prefer the Snyder cut. But to me personally, it's interesting to see two different cuts of the movies. So you can compare a lot of things. And I feel like the movie experience is different for both films. And I feel like we should get that with a lot of films out there that have different cuts that never saw the light of day. Whether that's in the horror genre, the action, the drama, it doesn't matter. Movie studios, you want to make the money back you lost when a lot of these movies came out, whether it was the 90s, the 80s, today. Take your time, go back, release the directors and extendeds and unrated cuts that were intended to be, that, shouldn't have been cut, redo them. You know, give us some type of collector's edition. And again, you don't have to release it right away. See what the audience will be like on YouTube. Throw scenes out. Same with the CGI. Redo it, throw it out on YouTube, and see how the fans respond. Because I can guarantee you, not only are they going to respond well, you're going to make your money back on all the films you have lost money on. You are going to recuperate that if you release these films on Blu-ray and 4K. I can guarantee it. And after watching the Star Trek The Next Generation Blu-rays and how they redid the CGI, go look it up. You cannot tell me if they did not redo certain films, they wouldn't look better. Because I think they would. Yes, it would take time. That's why you start off with films that probably need the redone. Then you go back. I mean, there's films out there that have the original cut where it's just a green screen. Great example I could use. A Tim Burton film. I wouldn't mind this, and I'm sure a lot of you guys wouldn't mind this. Especially if they really redid it in some way. If I could find the Blu-ray. Here we go. One of my favorite Tim Burton films, Mars Attacks. I feel like if you went back and redid the CGI on these Martians, not only can you make them look more menacing like they are in here, but I think it would look absolutely insane. And then you could sit there and say, oh, you have two cuts of, Mars Attacks. You have the standard original release, Blu-ray release, and then you have the new CGI redone version as well. So yeah, that's just kind of my opinion and challenge. I feel like the 90s was 10 times better when it came to their movies and their television. There was just so many different ranges when it came to everybody compared to what we have now. Remakes weren't as big and heavily relied on. Sequels were, yes, big box office hits, but they weren't as big and heavily relied on like we have today. Every time you turn around, there's a sequel or a remake coming out. Where rather than the 90s, you were, a remake's out. How often was a remake coming out? How often was a sequel coming out? Even if you got like one sequel a year, that's still better than having 2 or 3 sequels come out once a year, So to me personally, I feel like the 90s was really one of the better decades when it came to film, especially with me growing up. I mean, so many classics for adults, children, gave us the introduction to a lot of things. Some movies became pop culture phenomenons, like Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Crow. I mean, Toy Story. Just a lot of this stuff is now used in pop culture, clothing, toys, video games. I mean, the list goes on and on. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. This video is already at 30 minutes, but I would love to hear your guys' opinion on what you feel like is the better decade. The 90s, 1990 to 1999, or 2000 to 2010. Let me know down below, or you can do a video response on this. I challenge anybody out there on YouTube, even some of the big names like Christiana Horror, The Last Drive-In, or guys like Ryan 1988. Anybody who's a big YouTuber or is a smaller YouTuber, make a video response. Let's get this challenge out there. I would love to hear who thinks which is the better decade. And I will do a video on the 80s at some later time. It's going to be more of why I love the 80s. But I just wanted to kind of do this little challenge. So again, if you don't want to do a video response, you're more than welcome to comment down below. And if you want to do a video response, please do so. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. It's much appreciated. Share my video, get it out there. The more you share it, that means a lot more for me. It means more subscribers, more views, more watch hours, more interaction with fans. and keeps me going making content for you guys. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Go hit that subscribe button. I do movie reviews, unboxings, wrestling predictions, and so on and so forth. And there's more stuff being added every single day. So sit back, relax, enjoy, watch. Excuse me. Sit back, relax, hit that subscribe button, start checking out my content, and I think you guys will have a good time. And don't be shy or afraid to interact. And with that being said, I am Film Talk with Mikey, and until next time, we'll talk films. Peace.